What happens when a neglected victim gets handed to a predator, who turns out to be her protector? They diagnosed her as fragile, expensive, inconvenient. Her family reduced her to a medical burden and traded her like an asset. But he sees the deeper pathology immediately: systemic emotional abuse, coercive control, learned helplessness. And then comes the twist. This so-called monster doesn't break her. He studies the people who broke her. While the family thinks they've disposed of their weakest link, they've actually triggered a controlled psychological counterattack from a man who never lost control for a second.
At the chancel, Lila Whitmore waits in borrowed finery, facing a man the world has dismissed as wreckage. Damien Blackwell is a name synonymous with ruin. Blind, broken, and bankrupt, her family has cast her off, a disposable offering to settle their accounts. This marriage is intended as her final humiliation. But when Damien lifts her veil, his eyes are not empty. They are sharp, glacial, and unnervingly alive. A cryptic smile tells Lila she has stumbled into a trap far deadlier than a loveless union. We will follow Lila's descent into this unexpected maze. Consider your attention a contract to witness this story. The Whitmore estate was a monument to a life from which Lila was forever in exile. Picture frigid marble floors and chandeliers dripping with fortunes. The family portraits lining the walls were a silent judgment. Here, worth was measured in beauty, or it did not exist. By this standard, Lila was nothing. She was sequestered in the East Wing, in a room her mother found suitable. It was smaller than the servants' quarters, hidden away. With its sterile walls and stark furnishings, it was a space devoid of the person within. The room offered only a bed, a desk, and a crushing silence that swallowed all sound. Her sister Savannah's chamber, by contrast, was a sanctuary of pink silk and polished wood, with a closet that could contain Lila's entire existence. Savannah was polished like a precious stone, tutored in arts and the execution of a perfect smile. Lila was simply stored. Skipping meals again? Lila lifts her gaze from the untouched plate. Her mother fills the doorway, a familiar sculpture of disapproval. Evelyn Whitmore wears a cream blazer and pearls, prepared for business before 8 a.m. The woman always looked poised for either a hostile takeover or a funeral. Lila believed her mother regarded both with the same emotional distance. "I'm not hungry," Lila murmurs. "You are never hungry. It is the root of your condition." Lila didn't need the point clarified. She knew the verdict by heart. Too slight, too pale, too fragile. The doctors used a long clinical term for it, a word her mother refused to speak. Evelyn spoke only of the cost, the prescriptions, the consultants, the bills that ate into funds for Savannah's debutante life and the family's pristine reputation. "Dr. Carver is due this afternoon," Evelyn announces. "Try to look alive." "I always try." "No, you look sick. There is a difference." Evelyn leaves without waiting for a reply. That was her way. She issued decrees to Lila, not conversation. She delivered critiques and constant reminders that Lila's existence was a staggering inconvenience. Lila shoves the tray away and drifts to the window. Below, the gardens are immaculate, sculpted by an army of invisible hands. She played there once as a child, before her mother decided her presence in public was a liability. Now she only watches from above, a phantom peering at a world she could not enter. She can hear Savannah's laughter floating up from the grounds, bright and confident, the sort of sound that owns any space it enters. Lila wonders what it feels like to be wanted in a room. When Dr. Carver appears, Lila's in a plain sweater and jeans, perched on her bed for his inspection. He is a kind-faced, older man with a gentle air, but his kindness was billable. Hired by her mother, his job was to keep Lila functioning, not to make her well. "How have you been?" he asks. "Fine." "Sleeping well?" "Enough." And your diet? Lila pauses. It's sufficient. Dr. Carver taps a note into his tablet, his face a professional mask. Your latest blood work came back. Your markers are stable, but just barely. We need to be more consistent with your medication. I take it every day. I know, but your body isn't processing it efficiently. It's likely we'll have to increase your dosage again. The news was just another promise of being a heavier weight, more pills, more cost, more evidence for her mother's case that she was bankrupting them. I understand, Lila breathes. The doctor stands. I'll discuss the new regimen with your mother. For now, rest, and please eat. You're much too thin. He departs, and the silence floods back into the room. She just lies there, mapping the ceiling with her eyes, tracing the web of cracks in the plaster. She had memorized them years ago. 14 fractures, spreading like dark, delicate veins. They were never fixed. No one important ever came in here to see them. From downstairs, she could hear the life of her family, the low rumble of her father's voice, the sharp cadence of her mother's, Savannah's laugh again. It was the score to a film in which she had no part. Dinner that night was the usual theater of isolation. Lila sat at the far end of the table, an afterthought to her parents. The food was a masterpiece from a renowned chef. Lila pushed the food around her plate while Savannah described a charity gala and the new dress she was having made. It's a custom piece, Savannah said, cutting her steak with practiced grace. Ivory silk with gold thread. The designer says it will be ready in 2 weeks. How wonderful, Evelyn responded, giving Savannah a smile Lila had never known. Richard Whitmore, her father, grunted his assent. His presence was one of mass, not of warmth. His face looked carved from stone. He ran his real estate empire with the same cold calculus he used on his family. It was all a transaction, devoid of feeling. Lila! Her head jerked up at her mother's sharp tone. Dr. Carver says you aren't eating enough. I am eating. Not in any substantial way. Evelyn placed her fork down. You need to take this seriously. We can't keep increasing your medication simply because you refuse to do your part. I am doing my part. Then why aren't you getting any better? Lila had no answer that her mother would hear. The truth, that the drugs were draining her, that the fatigue was constant, that it was hard to hope when your own family treated you like a ghost, was a silent scream trapped inside her. I'll try harder, Lila whispered, the words barely audible. Evelyn had already returned to her plate. See that you do. The conversation was over. Savannah began talking about some wealthy boy she'd met, an investor's son. Evelyn was instantly engaged, asking questions, plotting moves. Richard half listened, his eyes on his phone. Lila ate what she could before quietly excusing herself. No one noticed her leave. In her room, her only sanctuary, she swallowed her pills and retreated to bed, though it was just past 8. The medicine brought a welcome stupor. Oblivion was better than being awake. To be awake meant to think, and thinking meant facing the truth of her cage. She was deep in a medicated sleep when the shouting started. At first she thought it was a nightmare, until her mother's enraged voice ripped through the house from downstairs. Her father's deeper tone answered, just as furious. Lila sat up, her heart pounding, and crept to her door. This is madness, Richard. You cannot be considering this. There is no other way. You know what he is. Then he can have Savannah. She's the one he wanted in the first place. He didn't ask for Savannah. He asked for a daughter of this house. And we both know, after everything, that Savannah is far too great an asset to throw away on that man. A knot of ice formed in Lila's gut. She pressed her ear to the wood, hardly daring to breathe. "So you'll just give him the sick one?" Evelyn's voice was pure venom, dripping with scorn. "The one who is already bleeding us dry?" "I'm making a sound business decision. Blackwell is finished. Everyone knows it. He's blind, broke, and about to lose it all. Marrying him to Lila solves two problems. We secure the deal, and she is no longer our financial burden." A long, taut silence followed. Then Evelyn laughed, a sound that was sharp, brittle, and ugly. "Fine," she said. "But let's not pretend this is anything other than what it is. We are throwing her away. We are being practical. We are being monsters. Then let us be monsters. I don't care. I just want it done." Lila stumbled back from the door, shaking. She wasn't shocked, not really. She had always known she was a liability. But to hear it laid bare, with such cold precision, to hear her own mother agree so easily, felt like a bone snapping deep inside her. She did not sleep again that night. She lay staring into the black, their words playing over and over until they became nothing but a meaningless, searing noise. Dawn breaks with her mother, Evelyn, framed in the doorway like a grim omen. "Get up," she instructs, her tone void of affection. "Wear something decent. We're going out." When Lila dares to ask where, the answer is a chilling, "You'll find out when we get there." Conditioned for obedience, Lila simply dresses and descends to meet her fate. A black sedan, polished like a coffin, idled outside. The drive was a symphony of unspoken tension, winding through an unknown district before stopping at a monolithic corporate skyscraper. "Where are we?" Lila murmurs. Her mother issues the sentence, "You're about to meet your future husband." The world around Lila slows to a stop. What? But Evelyn was already moving, striding into the lobby, forcing Lila to trail in her wake. An elevator ascended directly to the top floor, its doors opening onto a hallway that hummed with immense power and guarded secrets. Her mother rapped once on a pair of imposing doors, then entered as if she owned the place. The office was vast, with a sovereign view of the metropolis below. There, silhouetted against the glass, stood a commanding figure in a dark suit. He turned, and reality itself seemed to fracture. The whispers of a broken, fragile man were an elaborate lie. Before her was Damien Blackwell, a man of immense presence, his features chiseled and his eyes holding a sharp, unsettling focus. "Mrs. Whitmore," he acknowledged, his voice a deep resonance that owned the room. "I assume this is Lila." Evelyn pasted on a socialite smile. "Mr. Blackwell, thank you for seeing us." He cut through the pretense. "I agreed to no meeting. You begged. I allowed it." The quiet correction struck with surgical accuracy. Evelyn's polished smile wavered. "Of course," she forged ahead. "As we discussed, Lila is appropriate for the arrangement." Damien's piercing gaze fell back on Lila. Appropriate. An interesting choice of words. Lila felt a creeping erasure of self, as if she were a disposable asset in a bankruptcy filing. He rounded the desk, his approach measured and deliberate. His presence was overwhelming, not from any overt threat, but from the unnerving intelligence in his stare. "Do you have any idea why you've been brought here?" he asked. Lila found her voice. "My mother said I was meeting the man I am supposed to marry." "And what are your thoughts on that?" he pressed. For a single rebellious moment, she considered the truth. "I don't think my thoughts are a term in this contract." A flicker of something, perhaps respect, ghosted across Damien's face. "You're not wrong," he allowed. "They aren't, not to them." Desperate to close the deal, Evelyn interjected. "Mr. Blackwell, about the terms." "The terms are clear," Damien cut in, his eyes locked on Lila. "Your family's name is saved. I get a wife. This one." Evelyn's agreement was too fast, too relieved. "The deal is done." Damien's focus finally shifted to her mother. "The wedding is in 2 weeks." "I will handle every detail. Your only job is to make sure she's there." "She will be there." "Good." Damien picked up a file from his desk. "Our business is finished." Evelyn nodded, already turning for the door. "Lila, let's go." But Lila's entire world had been upended. The feeble man of rumor was in reality the master of this whole ceremony. "Lila," her mother's sharp command broke her reverie. She followed, completely dazed. In the car, Evelyn typed furiously on her phone, while Lila replayed Damien's gaze, a look that saw a strength in her she had yet to find herself. "This will fix everything," Evelyn muttered, a prayer to herself. "It has to." Lila knew exactly what this meant. She was the payment, the living collateral for her family's continued existence. At home, her sister Savannah was waiting, her face a mask of fury. "You saw him," she spat. Evelyn breezed by. "The agreement is final." "That should have been my agreement." "It's not. Get over it." Savannah then turned her fury on Lila. "Do you feel special now? Does marrying some decrepit old man make you feel important?" Lila said nothing, her tolerance for their drama utterly exhausted. "You're just pathetic," Savannah hissed before storming away. Lila stood frozen, a ghost in her own house, so accustomed to their venom it scarcely left a mark. The next 2 weeks were a surreal blur. She was measured for dresses she didn't select and told about guest lists she couldn't see. The final humiliation was the wedding gown. It wasn't new. It was the one made for Savannah months ago for this very purpose. It was just altered for Lila, a constant physical reminder that she was, and always had been, the second choice. On the day before the wedding, she stared at a stranger in the mirror. The gown, meant to be beautiful, felt like a costume for a part she never auditioned for. Her mother, Evelyn, fixed the veil with the clinical detachment of a museum curator. "It will do." This was her only blessing, not a word on her beauty, just a confirmation of her adequacy. The ceremony was in their garden, now filled with the faces of strangers. The flowers were stunning, but had no scent of celebration. A string quartet played an anonymous tune as Lila walked the aisle alone. Her father had claimed a last-minute business deal was more urgent than his daughter's marriage. So she walked by herself in a borrowed dress toward a man she'd met for only a moment, while her family watched with a mix of disinterest and profound relief. Damien waited, impeccable in his suit. His face was not happy, nor was it nervous. It was a mask of stark determination. When she reached him, he took her hand. His grip was strong, its warmth a surprise. The officiant began to speak, but the words were a meaningless hum. Her attention was fixed on Damien and the way he watched her. It was not the glance one gives a possession or a problem. He was just observing. "Do you, Lila Whitmore, take this man?" The question filled the air. For one chaotic heartbeat, she imagined saying no, of bringing the whole charade crashing down. But for what? "I do," she breathed. "And do you, Damien Blackwell, take this woman?" His reply was instant and firm. "I do. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." He leaned in, and Lila steeled herself. squeezing her eyes shut. But the kiss was purely procedural, a brief, sterile touch of his lips that was over the instant it began. The reception was a different kind of torture. Lila sat by Damien's side as a parade of associates congratulated him and gave her the careful smiles meant for delicate objects. Her own family kept a deliberate distance. Savannah didn't even appear. Evelyn stayed for exactly 1 hour, then left with a weak excuse. By the end, Lila felt hollowed out. Damien stood, offering his hand again. "It's time." "Where are we going?" "Home." She followed him to an idling sedan. He opened her door before getting in himself, and the car slipped away from the curb. Lila saw her childhood house recede into the growing twilight. The drive felt endless, gliding through districts of extreme wealth until they stopped before a set of massive, silent gates. The car climbed a long driveway toward a sprawling modern mansion that looked less like a home and more like a high-security compound. In truth, mansion did not do the place justice. It was a vast, sharp-angled creation of glass and black steel, an architectural marvel that was either a fantasy or a very beautiful prison. The car came to a stop, and Damien got out to open her door. As Lila emerged, staring at the colossal structure, she felt utterly dwarfed. "This is your house," she whispered. "This is our house," he corrected her. He led her through a foyer larger than her old living room, down a hall filled with priceless art, and into a great room with a wall of glass overlooking the entire city. The view was dizzying, an endless carpet of lights stretching to the dark horizon. "Sit," Damien said, gesturing to a sofa. She obeyed. He stood before her, studying her. "I assume you're wondering what comes next," he said. "I don't have any expectations." "Good! That makes this easier." He moved to the window, his frame a black silhouette against the city lights. "Your family thinks I'm ruined. Financially destroyed, desperate, and blind. That is the exact story I paid them handsomely to believe." Lila was confused. "What are you saying?" Damien turned, his eyes finding hers in the dim light. "I started those rumors myself. I needed to see what they would do when they thought I was at my weakest. And just as expected, they showed their true colors, casting you aside without a second thought." A knot formed in Lila's throat. "I don't understand." "I am not a fool, Lila, nor am I anywhere near bankrupt." He approached her again, his presence filling the space. "This was always the end game, for both of us." "Then why choose me?" "Because you were the one they were willing to sacrifice." The words were not unkind, just a statement of brutal truth. "I have no need for your perfection," Damien went on. "I only need you to understand one thing. You are no longer their problem. You are mine, and I always protect my investments." Lila could only look at him, her mind struggling to comprehend this new reality. Her world had fractured so completely it was beyond all recognition. "I don't understand what you want from me," she breathed. "Nothing," Damien replied. "For now, just exist here. Learn the space. We will deal with what comes next when it comes." He turned and was gone, abandoning her in a living area of impossible scale. For a long while, Lila sat, reflecting on how she had traded one gilded prison for another. But watching the city lights ignite, she had to admit this new confinement at least had a view. That perhaps was something. She woke the following morning in a strange bed, in a room so vast it felt like the start of a separate life. The sheets were an impossibly smooth texture, a different reality from the rough fabric she had always known. Light flooded through towering windows, washing away who she was for a moment. Then the pieces reassembled, the ceremony. Damien. This mansion that felt torn from a film. She rose slowly, every muscle aching with a deep-seated tension. The room itself, an exercise in severe modern design, projected a cold sterility, the untouched loneliness of a luxury hotel suite that had never been occupied. A massive wardrobe spanning one entire wall was slightly open, hinting at a life already chosen for her. She recognized her old clothes, or the few pieces that had comprised her wardrobe at the previous house. A soft rap on the door made her flinch. "You can come in," she called out. A woman in middle age with her hair pulled into a tight bun entered with a polished calm. "Good morning, Mrs. Blackwell," she stated. "My name is Helen. I manage the house. Mr. Blackwell requested I see how you were." Mrs. Blackwell. The name felt like a costume made for a stranger. "I'm all right," Lila answered on instinct. Helen's face remained a perfect blank. "Breakfast has been served downstairs whenever you are ready. Mr. Blackwell is in his office but can be called. That won't be necessary. I can manage by myself." "As you wish." Helen glided toward the closet, pulling the doors wide. "I've put your things away. If there is anything else you need, you have only to ask." Lila could only nod, having never been in a life where needing things was an option. Her clothing had always been practical, chosen to make her disappear. But beside her plain garments now hung new designer items, dresses she'd never laid eyes on, boxed footwear, and a cashmere sweater that was clearly expensive. "These are not mine," Lila observed. "Gifts from Mr. Blackwell were delivered," Helen explained. "He thought you might enjoy having a choice." A choice? The idea was so alien it made Lila want to laugh. For a life marked by a total lack of options, the man's gesture felt like a bitter joke. Once alone, Lila bathed in a bathroom that could have contained her entire former bedroom, then dressed in her own frayed sweater and jeans. The new clothes hung there, untouched, feeling less like presents and more like another form of ornate shackles. Downstairs, a heavy silence filled every space. She followed the scent of coffee to a kitchen that looked like it belonged on a cooking show. It was a cold stage of steel and marble, with a huge island and a line of pristine stools. A single plate waited for her, arranged with artistic precision, a work of edible architecture. Lila sat pushing at the eggs with her fork. They tasted incredible, a far cry from the simple food she knew. Yet a knot of dread twisted inside her. She managed a few bites and then gave up, taking refuge in the dark comfort of her coffee. "That won't be enough to keep you going." She turned. Damien stood in the doorway, his shirt so crisp he seemed to radiate the energy of a man who had already won the day. "I don't have much of an appetite," she admitted. "So I have been told." He came into the room, poured his own coffee, and leaned on the counter. His eyes were analytical, watching her as if she were a complex puzzle he was slowly decoding. "How would you know about that?" Lila asked. "I know quite a bit. Your family was not very guarded." Lila put her cup down with a soft click of porcelain on stone. "What did they tell you?" "That you are fragile, a drain on their finances, and, in the end, not worth their trouble," Damien said, his voice flat and clinical, as if reading a report. "They were very clear about their desire to be rid of you." The truth, even when expected, still had the ability to cut deep. To hear it spoken aloud by someone else gave it a terrifying new weight. "And still you married me," she said, the words a faint exhale. "As I told you, I needed to see what they would throw away when they thought I was nobody. They threw you away. That was all I needed to learn." "And what did you learn?" Damien paused, lifting his cup to his lips. That you were the only thing they had that was of any real value. Lila had no words. After a lifetime of being told she was worthless, his statement felt like a calculated form of cruelty. But Damien's face was completely serious. I can't figure you out, she confessed. You don't have to. Not for now, he said, setting his cup down. I have to attend a meeting. Ellen will be here if you need assistance. There's a library on the second floor, or you can explore. This house is yours now. You are not a prisoner. He left before she could try to understand his words. Lila spent the morning drifting like a ghost through the mansion, where each room was more impossibly lavish than the one before. She found guest rooms that had never been slept in, a dining room that could seat 20, and a private, fully stocked gymnasium. The library he mentioned was a 2-level sanctuary of books. She pulled a novel from a shelf and tried to get lost in it by a window. The book was about a woman starting her life over, but Lila realized after 3 chapters that she hadn't retained a single word. Her mind kept circling back to Damien, to the way he watched her like some priceless object he had just won at auction. Sometime around noon, Helen appeared. Mrs. Blackwell, you have a visitor? A chilling wave of fear washed over Lila. Who is it? She would not give her name, only that she is family. Lila's hands went cold. Family. That word could only mean one person. She let Helen guide her to the cavernous entrance hall, where Savannah was standing, taking in the room with a predator's gaze. She was dressed in a sharp, expensive suit that made her look like she was carved from ice and raw ambition. But the moment she saw Lila, her carefully arranged expression twisted into a look of pure contempt. Well, Savannah's voice sliced through the hall's silence. So this is the pretty cage you fell into. Lila could only manage a whisper. Why are you here? I had to see it for myself, she said with a smirk, her heels clicking against the marble. To see what kind of place our family's little embarrassment could buy. She scanned the space. It's fine, I guess. You need to leave. Oh, don't be so dramatic. I won't be long. Savannah turned back, her eyes glinting with a familiar cruel light. I'm just here to remind you of your place. This doesn't change a thing. You're still the weak one, the burden. Just a new debt on a different man's books now. Lila felt that old, familiar tightness in her chest, the return of a lifetime of fear, but under it, a small, rebellious flame flickered to life. She was tired of the script. If you're done, you can go, Lila said, her voice shaking. Savannah let out a sharp, ugly laugh. Look at you, one day in a big house, and you think you matter. You don't, and you never will. Is there an issue here? Another voice cut through the air, making both of them jump. Damien was at the top of the grand staircase, a dark and imposing silhouette. He came down the steps with the smooth, measured gait of a hunter, stopping right next to Lila. For a brief second, Savannah's confidence cracked. I was just visiting my sister. No, Damien said, his voice level and final. You were trespassing, and you were disrespecting my wife, which means it is time for you to leave. I have a right to be. You have no rights in this house. This is my property. You are not wanted here. He glanced at Helen. Show her out. If she comes back, call security. Helen moved with a quiet, perfect composure. Savannah's face hardened, but she swallowed whatever she was about to say, her mind clearly reassessing the situation. She shot one last hateful look at Lila, then turned sharply and walked out. Helen followed, and the heavy click of the front door echoed like a gunshot in the vast room. I am so sorry, Lila whispered. I had no idea she would come here. You will never apologize for what she does. Damien's voice was like a blade, not directed at her, but still dangerous. She is not allowed to come into this house and play out that scene with you. Not ever again. But that's just how she's always been. Well, as of tonight, that's over. Lila stared up at him, shocked by the cold fury in his voice. It was more than just anger. It was a raw territorial claim. It was as if Savannah had vandalized something that belonged to him alone, crossing a line that he would defend at all costs. Why do you even care about this? Lila asked, her voice weak. Because you belong to me now, Damien said, as though stating a simple fact of the universe, and I do not allow anyone to disrespect what is mine. He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world, and for the very first time since this all began, Lila felt something change deep inside her. It wasn't quite trust, but it was the first sign that it might one day grow. The days that followed settled into a strange new pattern. Damien was mostly a ghost, lost in his study or in business meetings she was never told about. Her days dissolved into one another within the sanctuary of the immense library, a space to grasp the surreal new framework of her life. Helen moved as a silent, ever-present shadow, impeccably courteous and efficient, yet always distant. It was like living in a 5-star hotel that catered to every unspoken need. On day 4, a doctor was announced. Lila, lost in a book, looked up as Helen appeared. Dr. Monroe is here for you. What for? Mr. Blackwell's arrangement. He felt a thorough examination was in order. Any argument Lila might have made died on her lips. She followed Helen to a sitting room where a woman in her 40s with calm, sharp eyes stood beside a medical case. Mrs. Blackwell, the physician said, rising, I am Dr. Monroe. Your husband asked me to check on you. I have a doctor, Lila said, the words feeling fragile in the air. Dr. Carver, yes, I have his records. Dr. Monroe gestured to the sofa. Please sit, this won't take long. Lila obeyed, feeling like a delicate specimen on display. The questions began with the same tired, hollow script Dr. Carver always followed. How have you been? Are you getting enough rest? Are you taking your medicine? Lila gave her well-rehearsed replies, a script perfected over years of being ignored. Then Dr. Monroe did something unheard of. She fell silent and just listened. Monroe spoke, her fingers sweeping over a tablet. Your blood work shows several deeply troubling signs. You're running on empty, and your body mass is dangerously low. Do the medications cause side effects? Sometimes, Lila conceded. Sickness, exhaustion. How often? Almost all the time. A small crease formed between Dr. Monroe's brows. And Dr. Carver knew about this? I told him. Did he suggest anything else? Lila just shrugged. He told me my body was just being difficult. That isn't a diagnosis. It's a surrender of duty. The doctor put her tablet down. I want to run a new series of tests. Blood work, scans, a complete metabolic workup, and I am starting you on a new treatment plan. One with the chance of working without destroying you. My mother would never agree to pay for that, Lila said, the words an echo from her previous life. Your mother isn't paying, your husband is. Dr. Monroe's clinical expression softened with a hint of compassion. Mrs. Blackwell, you've been fighting this with almost no real help. That ends now. I will give you the best care possible, but I need you to be honest. You must tell me if a treatment isn't working. Can you do that for me? All Lila could offer was a nod, a strange emotion catching in her throat. She wasn't used to anyone actually caring if she got better. After setting an appointment, the doctor left, leaving Lila gazing at the simple business card in her hand. The stillness of the late evening was broken by Damien's entrance. He found Lila on the living room sofa, a blanket pulled tight around her, her face lit by the empty glow of a movie she had stopped watching. Without a sound, he poured a drink at the bar and took the chair across from her. It was Lila's voice that broke the quiet. "Dr. Monroe came." "I know. You didn't ask me about changing my doctor. It was necessary. Dr. Carver was letting you down." "What right do you have to decide that?" Damien lifted his glass. "I read your entire file. For 3 years, he prescribed the same useless drugs. No changes, no new ideas. He wasn't helping you recover. He was supervising your slow fade. There's a world of difference." Lila tightened her grip on the blanket, a shield against his words. "My mother liked him." "Your mother liked his cheap rates and his lack of probing questions." The accuracy of the statement was a physical blow. Lila knew Evelyn valued the illusion of care over the messy truth of it. Her private suffering was irrelevant as long as her condition stayed behind closed doors. "What is all this for?" Lila's voice was barely audible. "This house, the doctor. You don't even know me." Damien leaned in, his eyes locked on hers. "That's true, not completely, but I know what your family did. And I know if I do nothing, you will die believing you weren't worth saving." "What if I'm not?" "You are." The certainty in his voice nearly shattered her defenses. Almost. "And I'll prove it, whether you agree to it or not." She didn't answer, turning back to the screen and feigning interest in the film. 2 weeks into their bizarre arrangement, the new medication began. Dr. Monroe's methods were different, and the results came quickly. The constant nausea started to fade. The heavy, soul-deep weariness began to lift just a little. She was still sick by any normal standard, but she no longer felt like she was drowning. She started to eat again, small amounts at first, but enough to smooth the worry from Helen's face. Sleep arrived more easily, though often filled with awful dreams. Images of her old room, her fists hitting the locked door, the sound of her family's footsteps retreating from her cries for help. One morning, she woke with the sun and found Damien in the kitchen, dressed for the day, a coffee mug in his hand. He looked over as she came in. "You're up early," he noted. "Bad dream," Lila admitted, pouring her own coffee and sitting at the island, watching him over the expanse of marble. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, showing the dark, intricate lines of a tattoo she had not noticed before. "Can I ask a blunt question?" she started. "You can." "Why me? What's the real reason for this marriage? It's more than my family getting rid of me. There's something else here." Damien set his phone aside, his gaze analytical. "Do you want the whole, unpolished truth?" "Yes." "Your family owed me a great deal of money. When they heard false reports that my business was failing, they looked for a simple way out. They offered a marriage, thinking I'd take Savannah and call the debt even. I was not interested in Savannah. I gave them a choice, a way to show me which daughter they saw as disposable. They gave me your name, Layla, without a moment's pause. So it was all just a test? It was a measure of their character, not of yours." Damien sat back. How a person treats something they believe has no value. That shows you who they are. Your family failed that test in spectacular fashion. "And what was your conclusion?" "That you deserved something better, and that I was the only person there willing to give it to you. Layla just stared at him. You don't know me well enough to decide what I deserve. Maybe not, but I know you deserved more than what they gave you. It wasn't a romantic declaration or even simple kindness. It was a cold, hard fact, and for some reason that made it much easier to accept. So what happens now? Layla asked. Now you get well. You find out who you are without their influence, and you let me handle the rest. Handle what? For just a second, Damien's expression became stone. Your family thinks they can throw you away with no repercussions. They are very wrong, but that is not your fight. The edge in his voice made something tighten in Layla's chest. It was not exactly fear, but a sharp realization that the man across from her was more than a protector. He was dangerous, and his motives were not entirely kind. I don't want them hurt because of me, she whispered. This has nothing to do with you. This is about what they did. Damien stood, picking up his phone. There's a very big difference. He left her alone in the quiet kitchen. Layla stayed there for a long time, turning his words over in her mind, unsure if she should feel guilty or safe or something else. In the end, she just felt tired. Later that afternoon, Helen found her in the library. Mrs. Blackwell, you have a visitor. Layla's stomach dropped. If that's my sister again. It is not. It is your mother. In some ways, that was far worse. Layla followed Helen to the foyer where Evelyn Whitmore stood, as perfect and cold as a marble statue. She was dressed in a cream designer suit and pearls, her hair flawless, her face an unreadable mask. Layla, Evelyn said, her voice meant for a garden party, not a confrontation in the home of the man she'd sold her daughter to. You look well. What do you want? Layla asked, cutting through the pretense. Evelyn's smile tightened. Just to see how you are, to make sure you're getting settled. I'm fine. Good, that's good. Her eyes scanned the entryway, taking in the valuable paintings, the gleaming marble, a light fixture worth more than a house. This is quite the place. Mr. Blackwell is clearly a man of means. I thought you said he was bankrupt. For a split second, Evelyn's composure fractured. I may have been given bad information. You lied. I acted on what I was told, Evelyn snapped. Don't you take that tone with me, Layla. I am still your mother. You surrendered that claim when you bartered me for a debt. The accusation slipped out, raw and untempered. Evelyn's face was a mask of shock, which quickly hardened into marble. You understand nothing. Every choice I made was for us, including you. You chose to be free of me. I chose to give you a life we never could. You should be on your knees in gratitude. A laugh tore from Layla's throat, a brittle, broken thing. Grateful. You cast me off like filth. You never once asked what I wanted. You were a child, not given a choice, and you are clearly not given one now, or you wouldn't be standing here. Evelyn's jaw was a tight, unforgiving line. I'm here to clarify your place. You are a Blackwell. The name has weight, and you will not forget where you came from. Oh, I know exactly where I came from, Layla said, her voice low. And I am never going back. For a tense beat, Evelyn looked as though she might strike her, but instead she drew a sharp breath, smoothed her jacket, and pasted on a smile that held no warmth. We will see about that, she whispered. Enjoy this new life, Layla. I do hope it's everything you've dreamed. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Layla shivering in the cavernous hall. Damien found her an hour later, a statue staring at the door her mother had vanished through. "She was here," he inquired. Layla could only manage a nod. What did she want? A reminder that I am still her property. A glacial coldness entered Damien's eyes. You are not. I know. She doesn't. Then I will make certain she receive the message. He enclosed her hand in his, the pressure firm, anchoring. Come. You've been frozen there long enough. He led her upstairs to a wing she hadn't explored. The room was private, a study with a desk poised before a window and walls lined with books. A closed laptop rested on the wood beside a stack of fresh journals. This is yours, Damien said. A space for you, work, read, hide. It makes no difference. It belongs to no one else. Layla's gaze swept the room, and the iron band around her chest began to give. Why are you giving me this? Because you have a need, and I have the means. It was not a gesture of affection, but an assessment of reality, and reality was the only currency Layla could trust. Thank you, she breathed. Damien inclined his head, then left her to the quiet. Layla sat, tracing the grain of the desk, and for the first time in an age, she felt her lungs fill completely. In the weeks that followed, the room was her haven. She would rise, take her medicine, eat a silent breakfast with Damien if he was home, then retreat to her sanctum with its desk in view of the gardens. She started to write, at first only fractured thoughts, feelings she'd been forced to bury. Soon, the fragments began to weave into a story, notes on her family, questions about Damien, and the blueprints of a life she was just starting to build. Dr. Monroe started bi-weekly check-ins to track the treatment, and its impact was undeniable. A healthy color bloomed in Layla's cheeks, and the bone-deep weariness that had shadowed her for years began to lift. Her appetite returned, and the weight she had lost to illness slowly crept back. Your progress is beyond my most hopeful scenarios, Dr. Monroe commented, reviewing her results. Your vitals are stabilizing. We'll continue this regimen. It's working, Layla interrupted, a statement, not a query. It is, but consistency is everything. No missed medications, no pushing your limits. Your body has been through a significant ordeal. Layla nodded, the memory of her recent lesson still sharp. She had tried to walk the estate's paths and was left gasping for air inside 20 minutes. Damien found her on a bench, her lungs burning, and said nothing. He simply scooped her into his arms, carried her inside, and placed her on the couch with a look that was a clear command. Do not do that again. She had obeyed, but the improvement was real, transformative. Layla felt herself becoming solid, less a ghost and more a person. She began to notice things long lost in a fog of fatigue. The tune Helen hummed under her breath, the sharp, almost lethal rhythm of Damien's voice on calls from his office. She saw that the garden outside her window held roses in shades of cream and soft pink, subtle, not begging for notice. One morning, as Layla finished her meal, Damien strode into the kitchen, setting a small box on the counter. What is this? She asked. Open it. She did. Inside lay a sleek, powerful smartphone, already on. You did not have one, Damien said, as if stating a simple fact. That has been corrected. Layla stared at the phone. My mother took my last one on my 18th birthday. She said I had no need for it. You have a need now. My number is in it, as is Dr. Monroe's, Helen's, and a car service, should you require one. Require one to go where? Damien braced himself against the counter, his eyes locked on hers. Wherever you like. You are not a prisoner, Layla. You may leave. You will simply inform someone of your destination. Why? Because you are my wife, and that status would interest certain people. It was his first acknowledgement of the inherent danger in their union. Layla looked at the phone, its heft foreign in her hand. What kind of people? She pressed. The kind you need never meet if you are careful. It was a half answer, but she knew it was all he would offer. She was learning that Damien gave information only when he deemed it necessary, and arguing the point was useless. That afternoon, she sent a text to Dr. Monroe about her medicine and got an immediate, helpful response. Later, she messaged Helen to ask for tea. 5 minutes later, Helen arrived with a tray bearing 3 different kinds. It was a small thing, but it felt like a monumental power, a tether to a world she had been cut off from. The first crack in this delicate new calm appeared on a Tuesday. Layla was reading when a confrontation erupted downstairs. Setting her book aside, she crept to the landing to listen. Your excuses do not interest me. You had one task, and you failed. Damien's voice was like ice, quiet but with a quality that made the fine hairs on Layla's arms stand up. And I do not tolerate failure. It won't happen again. The other man's voice was thin with fear. You are right. It will not, because you are no longer involved. An absolute silence fell, broken by footsteps and the soft click of a door shutting. Then, nothing. Layla stood frozen, her heart slamming against her ribs. This was a side of Damien she hadn't seen. She knew his anger, but this was a colder territory. It was the voice of a man who didn't make threats. He rendered verdicts. When she finally returned to her room, she couldn't focus on the page. All she could hear was the terror in that man's voice and the chilling finality with which Damien had just erased him. She decided to press the issue at dinner. I heard a disagreement earlier today, she ventured. Damien didn't glance up from his plate. You shouldn't eavesdrop on private conversations. I wasn't. The sound carried. A valid point. He set down his fork. It was a business matter. It has nothing to do with you. What kind of business are you in? The kind one did not discuss over dinner. Layla's brow furrowed. You always say things don't concern me, but I'm your wife. Don't I have a right to know about the world I live in? Damien studied her for a long, silent beat. He leaned back, his face a neutral mask. I run an organization, he finally said. Investments, acquisitions, and security. Part of it is legitimate. Another part functions in areas where the law is more flexible. You mean illegal? I mean flexible. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Illegal is breaking rules you agreed to follow. Flexible is moving through spaces where rules have yet to be written. He raised his glass, swirling the dark red wine. I do not move drugs. I do not traffic in people. I do not hurt the innocent. But my principles are not your family's. My family has principles. The barest trace of a smile touched Damien's lips, but it held no light. Your family follows the rules that benefit them and ignores the rest. That isn't a code. It is simply opportunism with better marketing. Layla had no defense for that. She knew the truth of her family's hypocrisy all too well. So, what does that make you? She challenged. It makes me honest about what I am. That is more than most can say. That truth should have sent a chill through her. A month ago it would have. But here, in this house built on a fortune she couldn't fathom, she felt nothing. Damien had never told her a lie. In a world of illusions, his brutal honesty was an anchor. "Okay," she murmured. One of Damien's eyebrows lifted. "Okay. I won't ask, but if something happens that I need to be aware of, you will tell me, won't you? If it concerns you, you will know." "Very well. That is all I require." His eyes held her, mapping some new, unforeseen territory in her soul. He returned to his food, a silent, absolute end in the conversation. The following week, the next disaster arrived, disguised as her daily prescription. A profound wrongness woke her. It wasn't a common sickness, but a fundamental unraveling. Her stomach roiled, a leaden weight settled behind her eyes, and her hands were alive with a fine, constant tremor. She took her pills, blaming a restless night, and fought to begin her day. By midday, the unease had crescendoed into a violent purge. A brutal wave of nausea drove her to the bathroom, where she surrendered what little she'd consumed. Helen discovered her there, a pale, shivering shape on the cold tiles, and her first call was to Dr. Monroe. The doctor was there in under an hour, her face a mask of professional gravity. She moved through her familiar checks, her questions a soft drone in Layla's clouded consciousness. At last, Dr. Monroe raised the vial of pills Layla had taken. "Where did this come from?" she asked sharply. "The bathroom cabinet. It's always there." The doctor unscrewed the cap, shaking the contents into her hand. Her face hardened into granite. "This is not your medication." Layla could only stare, uncomprehending. "What?" "The prescription is wrong. Your bottle, your name, but these capsules have been switched." The doctor's voice was level, but the steel beneath it sent a shock of ice through Layla's veins. "Someone has tampered with your medicine. They've been feeding you poison." The world canted on its axis. Layla's hand found the arm of the sofa, her thoughts failing to connect. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Nobody comes into my room." "Someone has?" Dr. Monroe placed the bottle down and drew out her phone. "I need to call your husband." Damien was back in less than 20 minutes, moving with a speed Layla had never witnessed. He swept into the living room, his gaze locking on her, and the look that ignited in his eyes sparked an entirely new kind of fear in her heart. "Who has been in this house?" he demanded of Helen, his voice a low, lethal hum. "Just the usual staff, sir, and Mrs. Whitmore's sister was here 3 days ago." A muscle in Damien's jaw bunched. "Savannah came here?" "She said she was dropping off a gift for Mrs. Blackwell. I saw no harm." "Show me this gift." Helen's voice was a mere tremble. "In Mrs. Blackwell's bathroom. A candle, sir." Damien was already moving. Layla tried to rise, but Dr. Monroe's hand on her shoulder was an unyielding weight. "Stay put. Let him handle this." Seconds later, Damien returned, the pill vial in one hand, a small decorative bag in the other. He upended the bag onto the coffee table. A candle tumbled out next to a card, "Thinking of you," written in Savannah's saccharine script. She switched them, Damien stated, his voice stripped of all inflection. "She came to the house, used a gift as a pretense, and replaced your medicine." The words felt like a physical blow. "But why would she do that?" "Because she wants you gone. And if she can't send you back to your family, she will find another way to dispose of you." Dr. Monroe was on her feet now, her face a storm of fury. "This was an attempt on her life. We have to call the police." "No," Damien cut in. "Mr. Blackwell—" "I said no! The authorities are useless in this. It devolves into her word against ours, and the Whitmores have the money to make this disappear." He looked at Lila then, his eyes lit with a contained inferno she had never seen, a pure, disciplined rage. But that does not mean she will get away with it. "What are you going to do?" Lila breathed. "What I should have done the second she set foot on my property." He raised his phone, dialing. "It's me. I need a full workup on Savannah Whitmore. Her financials, her contacts, every single shadow. I want it by the end of the day." He ended the call and turned to the doctor. "Can you give Lila something to counteract this? I can stabilize her, but she'll need monitoring for the next 24 hours. If anything changes, you will be here to deal with it." It was not a request. It was an order. Dr. Monroe simply nodded and began her work. Damien moved to Lila's side, his hand closing over hers. "I apologize," he said, his voice low. "I should have seen this coming. This isn't your fault. It is entirely my fault. I knew she was a threat. I should have banned her from this estate after the burst incident." His grip tightened. "It's a mistake I will not make again." Lila wanted to tell him to be careful, to not escalate things, that it was not worth the trouble. But another feeling rose within her, a deep exhaustion from being the pawn, the fragile thing everyone sought to protect or destroy. "What is your plan?" she asked instead. "To make her regret the day she ever thought to cross me." Dr. Monroe stayed, monitoring Lila's recovery. By the third day, a semblance of strength had returned. On the fourth evening, Damien came home with the air of a general returning from a successful campaign. He found her in the library and took the chair across from her. "It's done," he said. "What's done?" "Savannah has been handled. My people ran a deep forensic accounting of her life. It seems your sister has been living a life of quiet desperation, drowning in debt, taking predatory loans, and hiding a significant gambling problem from your parents. I've purchased every single one of her debts. As of this morning, she answers to me." Lila closed her book. "What does that mean?" "It means she has two choices. She can attempt to pay me back, which is impossible, or she can disappear from your life for good. I made it very clear which option I expected her to take." "And she agreed?" "She had no choice. I also took the opportunity to inform your parents about what she did. Your mother tried to wave it away, but your father was less forgiving. Attempted murder, it seems, is a line even for him." Lila felt a war inside her, the ghost of family loyalty fighting against a brutal new reality. But the thing that won was an overwhelming wave of relief. Savannah's shadow was finally gone. For once, someone had truly fought for her. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Damien waved a hand dismissively. "You don't thank me for this. This is my duty." "Still, thank you." He stood, walked to her chair, and pressed a short kiss to the top of her head. It was a nearly automatic gesture, but the first of its kind he had ever shown her. Lila sat perfectly still, feeling the strange, unsteady beat of her heart. "Rest," Damien said. "We have a gala next week." "A gala?" "It's for the business. You need to be there." "I don't know how to act at those things." "You'll learn." And if she refused, he would make her go anyway. Her presence, it was clear, was not a request. He left her with the book, but the words of the page had dissolved into meaningless shapes. A gala meant a crush of people, of noise, and almost certainly a family. Those events were magnets for the wealthy, interconnected world her parents inhabited. A cold knot of dread tightened in her stomach. But Damien had given a command, and for a reason she couldn't name, The idea of failing him was unthinkable. The week that followed was a blur of structured preparations. Helen produced a stylist who looped a tape measure around Lila, asked a series of questions about her preferences, and then ignored every answer, choosing a dress she deemed a masterpiece. When the gown arrived 2 days before the gala, Lila had to admit it was stunning. A sheath of deep emerald silk that flowed over her body, cut with a neckline that whispered elegance, not invitation. "You will leave them speechless," Helen breathed, hanging the dress in the closet. "I will be terrified." "That too, but no one needs to know that if you just keep your head up." The night of the gala, Lila sat for an hour with a silent, methodical makeup artist. The woman worked without a word, transforming Lila's face into something sculpted and severe, a beautiful mask. When she was done, Lila barely knew the woman in the mirror. Downstairs, Damien waited, his black tuxedo making his formidable presence seem absolutely lethal. His eyes found her on the stairs, and he stopped, his gaze sweeping over her in a way that brought a flush of heat to her skin. "You look magnificent," he said, his voice flat. "So do you." "That's a given." He held out his arm. "Are you ready?" "No." "Good. Neither are they." The gala was in a downtown hotel ballroom, so vast it was designed to make you feel small. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto marble, and tables were set with stark white cloths. Ambition was the uniform. Jewels flashed like drawn knives, and laughter echoed with a brittle edge. Lila gripped Damien's arm, a lifeline in a hostile sea. They came in waves, men to shake Damien's hand, women to offer Lila smiles that held no warmth at all. She drifted through the gathering like a phantom, perfecting the motions of belonging while murmuring courtesies to faces she couldn't name. And then she saw them, her family, frozen in a portrait by the bar. Evelyn, awash in champagne. Richard, a muted echo of Damien's authority in a similar suit, and Savannah, a fire in crimson poised to burn all the oxygen from the room. When Evelyn's eyes met Layla's, the perfect mask of indifference shattered, revealing a crack of disbelief, or maybe it was rage. The distinction was unclear. Savannah, however, just stared, as if seeing a specter from a past she'd fought to entomb. Damien felt the change in the air's pressure. "Should we leave?" "No," Layla said, the word a shock to her own ears. "I want to stay." The barest hint of a smirk played on his lips. "Excellent." With the focused grace of hunters, they cut through the crowd until destiny, or something like it, placed them directly before the Whitmores. Evelyn was the first to regain her composure, her well-rehearsed smile snapping into place like armor. "Layla, you look well." "Thank you." "And Mr. Blackwell, it is a pleasure." "Mrs. Whitmore." Damien's voice was a study in civility, but an arctic chill flowed just beneath the surface. "Are you finding the evening enjoyable?" "Very much. Still, I admit my surprise at your presence, Layla. I was told these sorts of occasions taxed your constitution." "She is fine," Damien countered. "In truth, she's never been better. The new people I've engaged are working wonders." Evelyn's smile tightened into a brittle line. "How marvelous for you." Savannah said nothing. She simply bored into Layla with a searing look, her face an inscrutable mask, and Layla held her gaze, refusing to be the first to look away. Richard coughed, a futile attempt to cut through the suffocating tension. "Well now, a little family reunion. Is that what we're calling this?" Damien's voice was like splintered glass. "I wasn't aware that attempted homicide was now considered a family outing." A vacuum of silence followed. So absolute it seemed to steal the air from their lungs. The blood drained from Evelyn's face. Richard looked completely lost. Savannah's expression twisted into one of pure loathing. "I don't know what you're talking about," Savannah spat. "Oh, I think you do, as do they." Damien gestured to Evelyn and Richard. "I made certain of it." Evelyn stepped forward, her voice a low, threatening hiss. "This is not the time or the place." "You are right, but you made it the place when you raised a daughter who thinks poisoning her sister is a valid response to envy." Heads began to turn. A virus of whispers spread among the guests as they sensed the drama unfolding near the bar. "We should go," Layla breathed, but Damien was not finished. "No, let them all hear, every last one." He raised his voice, just enough to carry. "The Whitmores present a perfect facade of charity and high society, but the reality is they would discard their own daughter to protect their name. And when that didn't work, they tried to have her permanently silenced." The whispers grew louder. Evelyn looked as if she wished the floor would swallow her. Splotches of red, from fury or shame, stained Richard's face. Savannah simply stood there, trembling with rage, her hands balled into fists. "You have no proof," Evelyn hissed. "I have all the proof I need. And if you ever think of breathing the same air as my wife again, I will make it my mission to show this entire city the monsters you are." He turned, taking Layla's hand and leading her from the social wreckage. She followed, her heart beating a frantic rhythm against her ribs. They didn't stop until they reached the hotel steps, the cool night air a balm on their skin. Layla's hands were shaking. Damien saw and pulled her into an embrace that was both a shield and a promise. "You didn't have to do that," Layla whispered. "Yes, I did. They'll never forgive this." "I don't want their forgiveness. I want them erased from your life." Layla pulled back slightly, just enough to look him in the eye. "And what if they refuse?" Damien's face was like granite, completely without mercy. "Then they will be compelled to." In that instant, held within his strength, Layla knew it was the absolute truth. The fallout from the gala hit at first light. By dawn, Layla's phone was under siege from a barrage of unknown numbers. She was now the subject of a worldwide spectacle. Helen arrived with coffee and a tablet showing 3 different gossip sites, the headlines coiling like snakes in Layla's stomach. "Blackwell's secret bride unveiled. Whitmore empire crumbles at gala. Is Damien Blackwell's marriage a move for revenge?" Layla shoved the tablet away, unable to see more. "Does he know about this?" "He's the one who sent me," Helen said. "He wanted you to see it from us first, before the world got to you." "Where is he now?" "Downstairs, in the study." Layla found him there, just as described, seated behind a vast desk with a glowing laptop and a phone to his ear. He waved her in, then ended his call with a sharp, "Handle it," before disconnecting. "You've seen the storm," he said, more a statement than a question. "Some of it. It will get worse before it gets better. Your family is already issuing statements trying to spin their own tale. They're saying I forced you, that the marriage is a sham, that you're not mentally fit to make your own choices." Layla's hands tightened into fists. "That's a lie." "Of course, but a lie with enough money behind it can circle the planet while the truth is still lacing its boots." Damien shut his laptop with a final, decisive clap. "I can make all this disappear if that is what you want. A few calls, some targeted pressure. By morning, it will be like it never happened. And if we don't do anything, Then we ride out the hurricane. The world will talk for a week, maybe 2, before some new drama catches its attention. But your family will use every single one of those moments to paint you as the tragic victim and me as the monster. Layla walked to the window, her eyes fixed on the gardens below. The roses were perfect, untouched by the chaos inside. I don't want you to make it disappear, she said, her voice quiet but unyielding. Damien came to his feet. Are you sure? Let them talk. Let everyone see what they really are. She turned to face him, her eyes meeting his. You were right last night. They've hidden behind their respectable name for too long. It's time someone burned that facade down. Something new sparked in Damien's expression. It looked like pride, maybe even a profound respect. They have always underestimated you. I'm just angry. There's a difference. Anger is a powerful fuel, he was right. For so many years, Layla had simply been a passenger in her own life, taking what was dealt. But now, seeing her family prepared to sacrifice her once more for their own image, she knew she was done being their pawn. In the week that followed, the story twisted. Stories began appearing, quoting sources close to the family, all weaving the same tale. Layla was fragile. Layla was unstable. Layla was controlled by a dangerous, manipulative man. Evelyn even gave an exclusive to a magazine, feigning tears as she described her profound worry for her daughter. She just isn't herself, Evelyn cried in the article, which Helen placed before Layla at breakfast as if it were a live grenade. A marriage should be a free choice. I'm just so afraid Layla wasn't in a position to make one. Layla read the sentence again, feeling the last tie to her former life snap. It wasn't sadness she felt, or even pain. It was a cold, bright fury that made her next move feel terrifyingly clear. I'm doing an interview, Layla announced, her voice so firm Helen nearly dropped the device. Mrs. Blackwell, my side of this needs to be told. Their version can't be the only one out there. The warning came instantly. Damien won't like that. Then he can tell me himself. And he did. That evening, he found her in the library, researching sympathetic journalists. He stood framed in the doorway, arms folded, looking not angry but like a detached military strategist. You're planning on speaking to the press? He asked. They've already thrown me to the wolves. I'm just taking control of the narrative. You realize this will only make them more vicious. Let them. Layla closed her laptop. I'm done being afraid. I am done letting them tell the world who I am. Damien crossed the room and sat down across from her. If you do this, be ready for the consequences. They will dig up everything. Your medical history, your childhood, every private weakness, and use it as a weapon. They're doing it now. Not like this. Right now, you're on the periphery. If you speak, you become the center of the story, and they will aim everything they have at you. Layla's gaze met his, steady and strong. I know, but I would rather be a target than be a ghost. Damien watched her for a long, silent moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Blackwell, get Rachel Chen from the Tribune on the line. I want a full, on-the-record interview with my wife. This week. He hung up, his eyes fixed on Lila. We will approach this correctly. A respected reporter, a legitimate paper, and our complete cooperation. No ambushes, no hidden angles. Understood? Completely. And I will be at your side. You really don't have to be. Oh yes, he insisted, I do. You're stepping onto a battlefield, and I never let you go into combat alone. The interview was set for 3 days later. In that time, Lila armed herself, gathering every truth her family buried and every lie they sold to protect their name. Damien helped sharpen her narrative, stripping away the emotional debris to focus on cold, hard facts they couldn't twist. Don't give them any part of you they can turn into a weapon, he advised, scanning her notes. Stay calm, stick to what happened, and don't let them bait you into saying something you'll regret. I know how to do this. If it's too much, we stop. You don't owe the world your entire story. But Lila felt she had to tell it, at least enough for everyone to see what her family had done. This wasn't for pity, it was for payback. Rachel Chen was every bit the journalistic heavyweight Damien promised. She was precise, razor-sharp, and known for questions that cut to the bone while remaining impeccably fair. She arrived at the mansion with a cameraman and a recorder, claiming the living room and setting up her equipment with an understated authority. Thank you for agreeing to do this, Rachel said, making a final adjustment. I know it isn't easy. No, Lila agreed, but it's time. The questions opened with the basics: her meeting Damien, the circumstances of their marriage, her new life. Lila remained composed, knowing each word would be scrutinized and spun by anyone with an opinion. Then Rachel shifted her aim. Your mother recently told a reporter you weren't in a sound state of mind to be married. How do you respond? Lila took a measured breath. My mother has spent my whole life deciding what I am capable of. I was too sick for a normal childhood, too fragile to think for myself, and too much of a burden for her to bear. So when she says I couldn't consent, she means I didn't make the choice she had arranged for me. What choice was that? To disappear, to be sold off to a man she considered over the hill and broken, so I would fade into the background where I belonged. But I didn't. I'm still here. That's what's eating her alive. Rachel made a quick note. Your sister, Savannah, has a restraining order against your husband for alleged threats. Any comment? Damien tensed beside her, but Lila's voice was pure steel. My sister came into this house and switched my medication. She gave me something that nearly killed me. When my husband found out, he told her to get out and never come back. If she considers that a threat, it says far more about her than it does about him. Can you prove this? Yes, I have the medical reports, the pills she used, and a sworn statement from my doctor. Everything has been sent to our lawyers. Rachel's eyebrows lifted for a split second before she moved to her next question. There are rumors your husband's wealth was a mirage, that he isn't the business powerhouse people thought. What's your reaction to that? A dry laugh escaped Lila. You're sitting in his house. Does this look like the home of a poor man? Point taken. The interview pressed on for another hour. Rachel dug into Lila's health, her toxic family life, her future. Lila laid it all bare, never exaggerating the facts or playing the victim. When it was over, she felt hollowed out, a deep weariness that had nothing to do with being sick. Rachel packed up her gear and shook their hands. This should run early next week. I'll send a copy over so you can check the quotes. Thank you, Lila said. After she left, Damien pulled Lila into a tight hug. You were a warrior in there. I feel like I just blew up my entire life. You did, he said, but it was a controlled demolition. The story broke 4 days later. The headline read, The unsilenced Lila Blackwell, the Whitmore daughter they tried to erase. It was fair, factual, and absolutely brutal. Rachel had included Lila's story of the pills, the forced engagement, and the years of being made to feel invisible. She reached out to the Whitmores for comment, and their answers only damned them further. Evelyn's quote was a masterpiece of cold deflection. "We have only ever acted in Lila's best interests. It is a shame she sees it differently, but her feelings don't change the facts." Richard offered nothing. Savannah's attorney released a terse denial and threatened to sue. The public reaction was immediate and ferocious. A war ignited online as people chose sides, tearing apart every sentence and demanding justice. A few called Lila a spoiled traitor, but most agreed that a family who would sell their own daughter was capable of anything. In just 1 week, the Whitmore dynasty's perfect facade started to crumble. Charitable donors vanished. Business partners went silent. The once guaranteed invitations to high society events stopped coming. From the safety of Damien's home, Lila watched the empire burn, a sick mix of victory and sorrow twisting inside her. "Are you okay?" Damien asked one night, finding her staring at the firestorm on her screen. "I don't know. I thought this would feel better." "Revenge rarely does," he said. "But justice can. This is justice. Or maybe I just destroyed my family for spite." Damien sat down, carefully taking the phone from her hands. "You told the truth. How they deal with it is their problem, not yours. You don't have to carry their mistakes anymore." He was right. Lila knew it logically, but her heart still felt the weight. 2 weeks after the story ran, Richard Whitmore arrived at the mansion. Helen found Lila in the garden, telling her he was in the hall and looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Should I send him away?" Helen asked. Lila thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, I'll see him." Richard stood by the door, hands shoved in his pockets, looking 10 years older. The powerful man she grew up fearing had shrunk. "Lila," he said when he saw her. "What do you want?" "To talk, just for a minute." She led him to the sitting room, where the air between them grew heavy and thick with unspoken words. "Your mother isn't handling this well," Richard finally said, his voice raw. "The foundation is failing. Our friends won't take her calls. Savannah is bleeding money on lawyers, and this restraining order is a complete disaster." "I didn't ask for a list of your problems." "I know. I just thought you should know the damage." Lila crossed her arms. "You mean the damage from the truth, the consequences of your own actions?" Richard flinched. "We did what we thought was right. You did what was easy. There's a very big difference." "Maybe." He rubbed his eyes, a portrait of total defeat. "I'm not here to ask you to forgive me." "I know I don't deserve it, but I had to tell you that I'm sorry for all of it. For not protecting you when I should have. For letting your mother make calls I knew were cruel. For being a terrible father." The confession hung between them. Lila waited for a sense of release that never came, only a deep sense of fatigue. "I appreciate you saying it," she said quietly, "but it doesn't fix anything." "I know. And I'm not coming back. Not to that house and not to that life. I'm done with that part of my story." Richard gave a slow, grim nod. "I understand, but if you ever need anything—" "I won't." He stood, looking like he wanted to say more, but couldn't find the words. He just nodded again and walked out. Lila sat alone after he was gone, a small figure in the vast room, feeling the finality of it all. An hour later, Damien found her. "Helen told me your father was here." "He was," she said. "He came to say he was sorry." "Do you think he meant it?" "I think he was sorry, but it doesn't change a thing." Damien came and sat by her, pulling her close. "You don't have to forgive them." "I know," she whispered, "and I don't think I can." "Not now." maybe not ever. That's your choice. You get to decide what happens next, not them." Lila leaned into him, feeling the simple comfort of his support. For the first time in what felt like her entire life, she could finally breathe. But their armistice was a fleeting thing, shattered after only 3 days by Evelyn's new assault. The first volley was a lawsuit crafted to annihilate. Papers arrived claiming Damien had trapped her, meddled with her care, and cut her off from her family. The goal was to annul the marriage and seize control of Lila's life, declaring her broken. Twice Lila read the claims, her body trembling with a furious fire. "She's trying to declare me incompetent," she spat, pushing the documents at Damien. His face became a mask of stone. "She wants you caged again. It won't happen." "What makes you so sure?" "We have proof. The records from Dr. Monroe confirming your lucidity, the articulate interview you gave, and the fact you have managed your life for months without issue." He took the papers from her grasp. "My lawyers are already drafting a counter. This will be thrown out. And if it isn't, then we go to court and we bury them in facts, but it will not get that far." He was right. The suit vanished in less than 2 weeks, the judge calling it a vile attempt to bully a competent woman. Evelyn's lawyers filed an appeal. It was immediately denied. That final legal defeat seemed to break Evelyn entirely. She disappeared from public life, her voice vanishing from the press. The Whitmore Foundation was officially dismantled, its funds diverted, as the family name faded into silence to nurse its wounds. Lila should have felt triumphant, but what she felt was the quiet exhale of relief. The war was over, she had survived. Her win wasn't their ruin, but her own endurance. A month after the legal threat dissolved, Lila sat in the garden on the same bench where Damien had discovered her after her flight. Roses bloomed in a riot of color, and the sunset painted the sky in streaks of rose and gold. Damien sat beside her, his shoulder just touching hers. "You're quiet," he observed. "Just thinking." "About?" "All of it. How my entire world was turned inside out in just 6 months." "For better or worse?" Lila considered the question seriously. Half a year ago, she was property, sold to a stranger, a living weight. Now she was here, in a garden that felt like hers, next to the one person who had been her constant shield, feeling whole for the first time. "Better," she confirmed. "So much better." Damien smiled then, the first truly open expression she had ever seen on his face. "Good." They sat in a shared stillness, watching the sky bleed into night. His hand then covered hers, fingers lacing through her own. "There's something I need to say," he started. Lila's pulse quickened. "What is it?" "When I began this, it was a contract, a way to clear a debt, to prove a point. I had no intention of feeling anything for you." "And now," she breathed, "now I do. I have feelings for you. More than I ever planned, more than is wise, I imagine." Lila turned, scanning his face for a lie, but saw only raw, unguarded truth. "I have feelings for you, too," she admitted. "I don't know how it happened, but it did." "Is that all right?" "I think so. I'm still figuring this all out." Damien pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere." In that moment, held in his embrace as the light finally died, Lila believed him. For the first time she could recall, she trusted in something good, something real, something that was hers alone. The next morning, Lila woke up changed, not sick, not tired, but simply there, present in her own life in a way she'd never been. She dressed, ate with Damien, and then made her choice. "I want to build something," she declared. "What kind of something?" "I'm not sure yet, but something that matters, something that's mine." Damien put down his cup. "What are you thinking?" "A foundation, maybe, to help people like me, those left behind by their families who need care they can't get, who just need someone to know they exist." "That's a powerful idea." "You really think so?" "I think you are uniquely qualified for it. You have lived that pain, and now you have the power to make a difference." A warmth bloomed in Lila's chest. Hope, or maybe purpose, whatever its name, she held onto it. "Will you help me?" she asked. "Always. Whatever you need." The following weeks were a whirlwind of creation as they built the organization from the ground up. They brought in lawyers, financiers, and doctors, ensuring every detail was perfect. Lila dove in head first, learning the language of nonprofits, of fundraising, of grant proposals. It was exhausting, intricate, and the most satisfying work of her life. The Whitmore Foundation had been a spectacle, an empty shell. Lila's foundation would be its opposite. It was built to offer real help, and its name would reflect the woman she was now, not the girl they had tried to break. The Blackwell Medical Trust launched 3 months later, created to give total support to patients with chronic conditions whose families could not or would not help them. The Trust's very first case was a mirror of Lila's own past. A young woman broken by sickness, abandoned by family, and barely holding on. As Lila listened, she saw her own ghost and swore this time the story would end differently. On the day they opened, surrounded by her dedicated team in their new office, she felt a strange new emotion, pride, not in her bloodline, but in the life she had forged for herself. The foundation's success was immediate and explosive. In half a year, it had supported 43 people, given over $200,000 in aid, and built a network of volunteer doctors. Lila's days became a frantic blur of patient meetings, grant reviews, and strategic planning. The work was brutal, but it was hers, and that ownership remade her. Damien watched her transformation with a silent, deep contentment. He would clear his schedule for her galas, stand at her side during press events, and open his world of contacts for her cause. He deflected every compliment, pointing every reporter back to his wife. "This is her vision," he would say. "I am merely here to ensure she has the tools to achieve it." But Lila knew it was more. Damien had given the money, the influence, and the critical belief that she could do it at all. Without his initial backing, the foundation would have remained only a dream. One evening, after a punishing day spent deep in proposals, Lila came home to find Damien attempting to cook. The kitchen was a scene of controlled chaos. Pasta overflowing its pot, sauce splattered on the walls, and a deconstructed salad across the counter. "What is all this?" she asked, fighting a smile. "Dinner, or an attempt at it?" He shut off the burner before it could get worse. "Helen is off tonight, and I wanted to do something." "You've definitely done something. I didn't think you knew where the kitchen was." "I don't. That's the idea." Lila moved in, surveying the damage. The pasta was soft, the sauce was burned, the salad looked like it had lost a fight, but the gesture was clear, a messy, imperfect, and deeply touching act. "We can always order out," she suggested. "We can," he said. "Or you could teach me how to fix this." The next hour became a rescue operation, punctuated by laughter at his struggle with a pan, and ended with a meal that was barely edible but meant more than any five-star dinner. They ate at the kitchen island, trading stories from their day, falling into an easy rhythm that felt less like a contract and more like a true partnership. "I like this," Lila said, putting her fork down. "The food? I'm sure it's awful. No, this, us, feeling normal." Damien reached over, taking her hand. "Our life. It will never be normal." "I know, but we can have moments that feel like it. That we can do." The fragile quiet was broken by the vibration of Damien's phone on the counter. A single look at the screen was enough to bring back the hard, familiar mask. "I have to take this," he said, standing up. "Is everything okay?" "It will be." He disappeared into his study, leaving Lila alone with the wreckage of their meal. As she cleared the plates, she made a conscious choice not to wonder about the call, maintaining the willful ignorance she had adopted toward the shadowed corners of his world. He returned after 20 minutes, his features a tightly controlled mask that revealed nothing. "There has been a shift," he said. A chilling certainty crept into Lila's bones. "What kind of shift?" "Your family is changing the rules of engagement. This has moved beyond litigation. It is now a war of financial attrition." "What do you mean?" Damien held out his phone. A stark headline detailed the sale of the Whitmore estate and other key family holdings. "They're converting assets to cash," Damien clarified, "meaning they're hiding money or preparing for a major offensive." "Like what?" "Either to buy back their influence or to fund another attack against you." Lila could only stare, the realization dawning that this was not over. A truth he confirmed, remarking that her mother's obsession ran deeper than he'd ever imagined. The days that followed were draped in a thick, waiting tension. Damien's network watched the Whitmore family's every financial ripple with an unblinking gaze, waiting for their next move. Lila tried to lose herself in the Foundation's mission, but the shadow of an impending strike made concentration impossible. The attack, when it came, was not a frontal assault, but a whisper in the dark. An anonymous story fed to a major newspaper, claiming the Blackwell Medical Trust was merely a channel for Damien's illicit fortune. The accusation was a phantom, easily banished by their pristine records, but the story spread like a virus. The flow of donations slowed to a trickle. Grant requests all but vanished. The board called an emergency session to stop the bleeding of their public trust. As Lila sat listening to lawyers and PR teams debate damage control, the old suffocating grip of helplessness began to close around her heart. Her family had found a new way to destroy her by aiming for the one sanctuary she had built for herself. "We have to release a statement," one attorney urged. "Complete transparency. Show them the books. Prove there is no scandal." "It's not enough," another board member argued. "We need a forensic audit from a third party to silence any possible doubt." "Both," Lila said, her voice a near whisper. Every head in the conference room swiveled toward her. "We do both," she repeated, her voice now forged in steel. "The statement, the audit, and I will do another interview. On television this time. I want them to look me in the eye as I defend our work." "Mrs. Blackwell, that might not be the wisest course." "I'm not interested in being wise. I'm interested in being heard." She stood, her presence filling the room. "This foundation has a purpose. The lives we touch have purpose, and I will not allow my family to tear it down because they cannot stand to see me build something." A heavy silence fell, finally broken by the lead counsel's slow, measured nod. As you wish. We'll make the arrangements. The interview was set for 2 days later, live on a national morning show. Lila spent the intervening time in a crucible of preparation, drilling talking points with her team, and mapping out answers to the brutal questions she knew were coming. Damien was a shadow at her side, a constant presence reviewing her notes, offering sharp insights and reinforcing her spirit for the coming battle. You don't have to be the one to do this, he told her the night before. Yes, I do. You could let the legal team handle it, publish the statement, and let the facts speak for themselves. It wouldn't be enough. People need to see that I'm not hiding, that I believe in this work with every part of me. Damien pulled her into his arms, resting his chin atop her head. You will be magnificent. How can you be so sure? Because you have been magnificent in every fight since I've known you. This will be no different. On the morning of the broadcast, Lila woke with a cold knot of dread in her stomach. She chose her armor with care. A navy blazer over a white blouse, crisp, professional, a uniform projecting resolve, not fear. After the careful work of a makeup artist and a final touch to her hair from Helen, the moment arrived. The studio was a cavern of cold, bright light, an impersonal space where cameras watched like predators, making her feel utterly exposed. The host, Jennifer Park, a woman known for her sharp but fair style, gave her a firm handshake as they reviewed the agenda before the little red lights on the cameras blinked to life. Our guest today is Lila Blackwell, founder of the Blackwell Medical Trust, which is now facing serious allegations of financial impropriety, Jennifer began. Mrs. Blackwell, welcome. Thank you for having me. Let's cut to the heart of it. An anonymous source claims your foundation is being used to launder money. What is your response? Lila looked directly into the camera's lens, her voice clear and steady. That claim is an absolute fabrication. The Blackwell Medical Trust operates with total transparency. We have already commissioned an independent audit, and our financial records will be opened to the public. Every dollar we raise goes directly to patients who cannot afford life-saving medical care. That is our only mission, and it is a sacred one. Do you have reason to believe these claims are personal? I know they are. My family has waged a systematic campaign to ruin my life since I left them. When their legal attacks failed, they resorted to character assassination. This is just their latest attempt. That is an incredibly serious charge to make. It is also the absolute truth, and I have the proof to back it up. Jennifer leaned forward. Critics suggest you use your husband's fortune and power to avoid accountability. How do you answer that? While my husband provided the initial funding to establish the foundation, every single decision, every grant, and every program is approved by an independent board of directors. I do not run from accountability. I demand it. That is the entire point of the independent audit. The interview pressed on for 10 more minutes, Jennifer launching pointed questions that Lila met with hard facts and an iron will. When it was over, Lila felt scoured out, empty, but also certain. She had spoken her truth. The public reaction was a tidal wave. Support flooded social media. Donors who had paused their contributions reaffirmed them, and in a week, the audit confirmed everything Lila had said. The foundation's integrity was absolute. Every cent was accounted for. The allegations were laid bare for what they were, a cruel and baseless attack. The news outlet that broke the story printed a full retraction and a formal apology. The anonymous source was unmasked as a shell corporation owned by Evelyn Whitmore. Damien laid the proof before Lila one evening, his face a mask of grim triumph. "Your mother paid $50,000 to create that lie," he told her, and it blew up in her face. Lila stared at the documents, a toxic brew of exhaustion and rage churning inside her. "When does this end?" "It ends when we decide it ends." "How?" Damien pushed the papers aside, his eyes locking onto hers. "We go after her. We can bury her in lawsuits for libel, for harassment, for conspiracy. We can trap her in so much legal and criminal trouble she will lose everything she has left." "And the other option?" "The other option is we do nothing. We decide that she has already done more damage to herself than we ever could, and we walk away." Lila weighed it. A primal part of her screamed for vengeance, to force Evelyn to pay for a lifetime of cruelty. But the part of her that had been building something new, something good, only wanted peace. "I want to be done," she said finally. "I'm done fighting. I'm done giving her any part of my life." Damien nodded, slow and certain. "Then we are done. But if she ever comes for me, or for you, again, I will end it. And my way of ending it will not be quiet." It was enough. Lila let herself believe that the war was truly over, that the worst of the trials were finally behind them. The final blow came 3 months later, delivered by an enemy Lila had never seen coming. The Whitmore estate, which had sat on the market for months, was sold. While renovating, the new owners found a hidden space in the attic filled with old boxes, ledgers detailing years of financial crimes, of bribes paid, and illegal deals made by Richard and Evelyn Whitmore. The authorities were called. Federal agents descended. The family's entire corrupt empire came crashing down with breathtaking speed. Richard was arrested at his desk. Evelyn was stopped at the airport trying to flee. Savannah, implicated in several schemes, surrendered alongside her lawyer. Lila watched it all on the news, a silent witness to the final unbelievable act. These were her people, the ones who had raised her, who had sculpted her understanding of what a family should be. Now they were paraded in steel cuffs. Damien found her on the sofa when he came home, her eyes locked on the television screen. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low. "I don't know. Am I supposed to be happy about this?" "You're supposed to feel exactly what you're feeling." "I feel hollow." "Is that wrong?" He sat, pulling her into his side. "It's real. That's all that matters." The trial dragged on for 6 months. Lila never went, but she watched the news as her family's unbreakable dynasty was taken apart, miserable piece by miserable piece. Richard was found guilty on multiple counts of fraud and bribery. For Evelyn, the verdict was just as damning: conspiracy and embezzlement. Savannah took a deal, trading prison for a criminal record and community service. When the dust finally settled, the Whitmore name was nothing but ash. The estate was seized to pay their debts. Their remaining assets were liquidated. Everything they had built, everything they had protected with such savage fury was simply gone. In his first month behind bars, Lila's father sent a letter. She almost threw it away, but her curiosity was stronger. The message was short, an apology, a confession of his failures as a father, and a sliver of hope that she might one day forgive him. It was the most honest thing he had ever said to her. Lila read it twice, then slipped it into a drawer and didn't think of it for a very long time. Life went on. The foundation thrived, spreading to 3 cities and helping hundreds of people cast out by their families, just like her. She brought on a full-time staff, learned to delegate, and discovered how to lead instead of just survive. Damien's business changed too. He started selling off the shadier parts of his portfolio, moving money into legitimate ventures, and building something that didn't need to be guarded around the clock. He hardly mentioned it, but Lila saw the shift. Fewer frantic calls in the dead of night, fewer trips where he would vanish without a word, more evenings at home. One night, a year and a half after they were married, Lila came back from a foundation gala to find Damien waiting with dinner, and it wasn't his usual burned pasta. He had hired a private chef for the night. "What's the occasion?" she asked. "Does there need to be one?" "With you," she countered. "Usually." A small smile played on his lips as he held her chair. "Please." They ate in a comfortable silence, the kind that grows when you know someone so well that words are no longer required. Afterward, Damien poured wine and led her to the terrace overlooking the city. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. Lila's heart gave a little lurch. "That sounds serious." "It's not, or I hope it isn't." He set his glass down, facing her. "When we got married, it was a contract, a move on the board to win the game. I never, ever intended to actually fall for you." His words hung in the night air. For a beat, Lila forgot how to breathe. "But I did," Damien continued. "Somewhere between watching you fight your family and build something beautiful from the wreckage, I fell in love with you, and you need to know that." Lila placed her own glass down, her hands shaking just slightly. "I love you too." "You do?" "Yes, I have for a while. I just didn't know how to say it." Damien pulled her in, and the kiss was nothing like the ones that came before. Not a calculated move, not a guarded gesture, but completely and utterly real. When they pulled apart, a smile bloomed across Lila's face. "So, what's the play now?" "Now," he said, "we live, we build our own world, and we face whatever comes next together." I liked the sound of that. The next 2 years were the best of Lila's life. She and Damien fell into a real marriage, one built on partnership, not just a shared need to survive. They traveled, they worked together, they learned how to argue without destroying each other and how to make up without sweeping things under the rug. It wasn't a fairy tale. Some days were hard, some fights were loud, and she still fought the ghosts of what her family had done. But it was real, and because it was real, it was worth fighting for. The foundation became her true legacy. By the 3rd year, they had helped over 1,000 people, partnered with 15 hospitals, and created a model that other charities began to copy. Lila was invited to speak at conferences, write for medical journals, and sit on the boards of similar organizations. She said yes to the things that mattered and no to the rest. Dr. Monroe stayed on as her doctor, tracking her progress and adjusting her medication. Lila's illness was never gone, but it was managed. It was stable. And it was no longer the death sentence it had once been. She had good days and bad days, and she learned to live with both. Helen remained their housekeeper, becoming less of an employee and more of a friend. It was Helen who noticed Lila's morning sickness first and who quietly left a pregnancy test on the bathroom counter with a note that said, "Just in case." Lila took it on a Tuesday morning, staring at the positive result with a mix of shock and wonder. She never thought she'd be healthy enough for children, never dreamed her body could carry a child. But Dr. Monroe confirmed it a week later, running a dozen scans before giving a cautiously optimistic verdict. "It will be high risk," Dr. Monroe warned. "We'll have to watch you closely, change your meds, and be ready for anything, but it's possible." Lila told Damien that night over dinner. He was lifting his fork to his mouth when she said simply, "I'm pregnant." He nearly choked on his food. "You're what?" "Pregnant," she said again, "about 8 weeks." Damien put his fork down, his eyes fixed on her. "Are you serious?" "Completely." Dr. Monroe confirmed it. He was silent for what felt like a lifetime. Then he stood, walked around the table, and hugged her so tight she could barely breathe. "We're having a baby," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We're having a baby." The pregnancy was a war. Lila was on bed rest for weeks, fighting the exact complications Dr. Monroe predicted, which were still terrifying when they happened. Damien hired a team of specialists, turned a guest room into a medical ward, and made sure Lila followed every single order. There were times Lila was sure her body would fail her again, that she would lose this baby before she ever got to hold her. But she held on, week by week, month by month, until at 7.5 months her daughter was born. They named her Elena. She was tiny, early but strong, with Damien's dark hair and Lila's gray eyes. Lila held her for the first time in a room full of beeping machines and felt something inside her click into place. This tiny person, this perfect little thing, was hers. No one could ever take that away. Damien stood beside the bed, just staring at Elena like she was a miracle. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She's ours." "Yes," Lila breathed. "She is." 18 months later, Lila had their son, Alexander. The second pregnancy was easier, or maybe Lila was just stronger for the fight. Alexander came into the world with a powerful yell, healthy and loud, with a look that promised he would be a force to be reckoned with. "He's your son, all right," Lila said to Damien, exhausted but thrilled. "He's our son," Damien corrected. Juggling 2 kids, a foundation, and a massive business was a kind of organized chaos Lila had never imagined. Some days she felt like she was drowning, but she wasn't alone. Damien was a hands-on father, sharing the late-night feedings, the diaper changes, the bedtime stories, all the things Lila never dreamed he would do. Helen became a surrogate grandmother, spoiling the children while making sure Lila took care of herself. The foundation kept growing, adding a pediatric wing for chronically ill kids, so no child would ever feel like the burden she had. 5 years after their wedding, Lila stood in the foundation's main hall, looking at a wall of photos of the people they had helped. Every picture was a story. Every story was proof that what they were doing mattered. Damien came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Proud of yourself?" he asked quietly. "I am. Is a feeling like this even allowed?" "It is more than allowed. You have earned this." Lila melted into his embrace, absorbing the stillness of the moment. Her life was not a simple thing. It was still marked by difficult days, by the frailties of her health, and by the deep psychological fractures from a family who tried to erase her. Yet she had built something real, something of immense worth that would stand long after the memory of her pain turned to dust. "Do you ever think of them?" Damien's voice was a soft intrusion. "Your family?" "Sometimes, less than before." "Any regrets?" Lila paused. She saw the ghost of the girl she'd been, a prisoner in a house devoid of warmth. She saw the family who used her as a chess piece. She saw all the lives she might have lived if she had stayed small and quiet, just as they wanted. "No," she said finally, her voice firm. "No regrets." In truth, walking away from that family was the defining act of her existence. By turning her back on those who would never see her, she made room to become someone she could admire. And her life with Damien, The man everyone misread was a thing of greater substance than the Whitmores could ever have imagined. Her children would never feel the chill of being unwanted. They would grow up in a home saturated with affection, with parents who chose them fiercely every single day. They would never be used as tools, seen as obligations, or hidden in shame. That night, after the children were asleep and the house fell silent, Lila and Damien sat on the terrace, watching the city lights glitter below them. "Something's been turning over in my mind," Damien said, breaking the quiet. "What is it?" "An end to this entire life, where we're always waiting for the next shadow to fall." Lila's gaze locked with his, searching his eyes. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I built an empire, but all I want is a life with you and our children. I would even work for your cause if you'd let me." "I would," she breathed. A small smile touched his mouth. "Good, because you are my home now." A profound silence settled between them, the kind of quiet that is earned on a battlefield shared for years. In that stillness, an old vision returned to Lila, the girl in white, a frightened sacrifice on an altar, a life she was supposed to throw away. But she had survived every poison her own blood had fed her. In a stunning reversal of fate, she built a sanctuary for the broken. She bound her life to a man who saw a queen where others saw only a flaw. And from that union they forged their own dynasty, one built not on blood right, but on unshakable loyalty. The greatest irony was this: every move her toxic family made to destroy her only magnified her strength. They exiled her from their world, a fatal error in judgment. And as they set their own kingdom to the torch, she, the cast-off, inherited everything that truly mattered. It was a perfect monument to the self-devouring nature of hate. The entire story is a lesson in how the Whitmores engineered their own irrelevance. They abandoned the daughter they saw as a weakness while propping up their polished, hollow heirs. But it was Lila who created a legacy that would last. Her name became a symbol of resilience while theirs faded into a bitter whisper. In the final reckoning, Lila won. She never had to orchestrate their downfall. Their own greed saw to that. Her victory was simply to survive, and in surviving, she nullified the failure they had stamped upon her. She chose to build instead of burn, the most absolute form of power. Vengeance was never the point. The quiet triumph of a life lived beautifully was. We see Lila now, with her partner Damien, their children safe in the sanctuary they made, possessing something she never thought was hers to have: peace. The girl they tried to put in the ground did not die. Instead, she grew in the darkness they cast her into, flowering into a force they were too blind to ever see coming. She is never going back. The war is over,